Yeah. All right, so we've looked at thrusts offensively. So now we're going to look at thrusts defensively. This was actually a big thing in the late 19th century with probably one of the more neglected, you know, manuals by a guy named William Toohey or Toey. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'll post the manual to the group so we can all have our best guess next week. But he advocated that being able to return the thrust from each of the parries. He only really has 4 parries. It's a very simple system. His idea was parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust as a return. And this works really well because a lot of the time when you've got the parry, returning with the thrust means you maintain control of your opponent's sword. I'll do my best to show this solo, but basically the idea is if I parry, I've got control of my opponent's sword. My opponent's sword is over here and they need to move it away from here in order to possibly attack me anyway. So that means I have to go over there, which gives me a big opening, or they have to move back, they have to retract, which is also why you always retract after attack. If I parry and then I extend the thrust, I basically go with them as they pull away, so I maintain control of them as they come in. And that gives me a very, very safe riposte. So the first riposte we're going to look at is parrying carte and then reposting with carte. So from the on guard position, parry carte, all I do is I turn my hand over to the carte position, or same hand position as carte number 1. I bring my hand over to the outside of my body, that's in line with the outer edge of my body, particularly my thumb is in line with the outer edge of my body. And if you have a cat like a falling mirror or something at home, practicing this in the mirror is a really good idea. I mean, you want to do a lot of practicing in the mirror, but I recommend doing like unless you're a particularly committed person, just do 10 repetitions each side, but just make sure you do that like lots of times a day. The other thing I do is I lift my tip up. So my tip is down here when I'm in guard, my tip is up here when I'm parrying. And when we talk about coming on guard in carte, tip is down because I want to be able to thrust my opponent. When I'm parrying, it's more important I have my tip high so the opponent doesn't come over the top of my side. So from here, this is my carte parry. Let's go back to guard. And the other thing about those 3 steps I suggested, they're all done simultaneously. No particular order to which I bring my hand over, keep my tip in line, raise my tip up, or turn my hand to the carte. There's no particular order to that. So, just doing all those parries at once as quick as possible. Carte. Back to guard, carte. Back to guard, carte. Back to guard, carte. And back to guard, carte. Back to guard, carte. Back to guard, carte. Back to guard, carte. And back to guard. Something you can do with this as well, because you want a little bit of a jerk in your elbow to propel you forward. So I just have a little forward movement. Not only does that kind of whip my sword into line a little bit quicker, what it also does is it gives me a little bit of interest, like kind of just punch a little bit of a shock to my opponent's sword that can help stop the momentum. Cool. All right, so let's look at how to repair to the riposte. So I parry carte, and all I do is I bring my tip down on line, extend, and thrust. So the idea is basically from here, I bring my tip down to bring it on line for thrust, and I want to do that before I thrust, because I find it's very, very easy if you don't. For your tip to be too high, you just slap your opponent flat. So, parry, bring my tip on line, extend and thrust. And the rhythm of that, do it from the side so you can see. Parry. And I'm basically letting my sword pull me in. So when I extend out, and I start coming forward once my arm gets to full extension. Basically, I don't want to have to move my body, my juicy, sweet, squishy body towards my opponent and my opponent's sword. That's putting me in the danger zone any sooner than I have to. The point where I have to is the point where I'm at full extension. To let's just practice that a few times. So, parry and thrust. 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 Back to guard. Right. So I find that's quite sweet, and I find that it's really good for maintaining control of my opponent as long as I come in. The case has been made by people who are quite good fencers that unless you've got a very, like you've displaced your opponent's sword and got very clear control for a cut, what you should actually do is always thrust on the return, because you've got, that's the point where you've got the best control, you've got kind of control just through hand position. I don't necessarily agree with that, although when I found I tend to do that a lot when I'm fighting people who do like medieval systems, very different systems to me, where they don't necessarily want to recover to guard after they've attacked, where they just, if they want to attack multiple times and they're very quick about it. I find with like experienced fencers who attack, who just repeatedly attack, their attacks are so big I can kind of snipe them anyway. But with experienced fencers doing lead systems where you launch multiple attacks in succession, that parry thrust return is quite good and quite useful. All right, so speaking of returning thrusts, let's see if there's any questions. So Jacob says, do you find that thrusts to the sword arm are significantly more difficult to land, easier to defend than cuts to sword arm? Should we be thinking about reposting with thrusts to the head body generally, or reposting to the sword and reposting to the sword arm primarily with cuts? It depends on, I find whichever one is easier depends on the position my opponent is in. So I mean, the reason why I primarily cut to the arm rather than thrust the arm is because in the medium guard, my tip isn't pointing at the arm. My tip is pointing at my opponent's throat. And so a cut to the arm is direct, a point thrust to the face is direct, but I'd have to move my tip before thrusting the arm, if that makes sense. I find with para-riposte thrusts, generally the arm is not easily accessible with a thrust where it is with a cut. So I think, I guess I would agree that I find it significantly easier to land cuts to the arm when reposting, but that's more a product of the parries I'm using, because I'm primarily using cut and tierce parries. But what you might find is, particularly if you're parrying like second or something, actually also parrying second and septime when your tip's online, thrusting is often quicker, and usually depending on your opponent's height, to be honest, you might find it quicker to thrust to the arm. Yeah, like in general, I find it's easier to cut to the arm than thrust the arm with a riposte, and also with an opening attack. But that if I wanted to thrust to the arm, I can make it very easy for myself by changing guards, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's all kind of contextual, I guess, is the best answer I can give them. I'm sorry if that's a bit vague. So Ellen wants to know, what's the difference between a return and a riposte? And Jacob says that makes sense. Now, I've made sense when answering one question. Let's make sense of it. Short answer is, near as I can tell from the sources, it's the same term, or the terms have the exact same meaning. They're just used differently by different authors. My terminology is a bit screwed up because I'm drawing from multiple sources that don't always use the same terms. And I try to be a bit more coherent with my terms where I can be. Yeah, like there are times when I will call a riposte a return, and there are times when I'll call a return a riposte. But yeah, basically, yeah, just different terms mean basically the same thing. I think in some contexts, a repost is specifically a return attack, whereas a return is just an action done after is an action done after your opponent has done something to you. So you might return with a beat, or return with a feint. But for the most part, yeah, a return and a repost are basically the same thing. That also makes sense. Yeah, cool. All right, so are there any other questions before we move on? It's looking like no, so I'm going to stop recording.